Hello, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the CEO Sports Show for December 23rd, 2025. Welcome to the meeting room. That is the name of my studio, the meeting room. That's what I'm going to roll with now. I'm the CEO, and we got the meeting room already. So there we go. Happy to have you guys in here today. There was a Monday Night Football game that, obviously, this was a pretty important Monday Night Football game. You have the 49ers who are vying for a playoff spot. Oh, I think they actually clinched the playoff spot before this game even started, but they're trying to win the NFC West. And right now, they're a dangerous football team, and we're going to talk about that. The Colts and how they are doomed. Wow, they are doomed. And then because there's something that happened with the Colts that relates to the Jets, and I just feel like I need to talk about it, we're going to go to the Jets in this. We're gonna hit on them and why I think their future is just so bright, but that's besides the point. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. Without further ado, let's get into the episode. Okay. Let's start off with the San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers are as dangerous as any team in the NFL right now. And when I mean dangerous, do I mean like, hey, they can win a Super Bowl this year? No, but do I think that they're a team that can make some teams very uncomfortable come playoff time? And if you have to play them in the first round, you're not going to want to see them. Yeah, that's the type of team I think San Francisco is. And I have to give a lot of respect to Brock Purdy. It's so funny. Everybody has so much to say about this guy. And it feels like every season he's putting up big numbers and he's consistently leading top offenses with this San Francisco 49ers team. I don't know. I think he has as good of a case as anybody to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And their head coach has just as good of a case as anybody to be considered the best head coach. Troy Aikman said yesterday, if there was one coach I could hire, it'd be Kyle Shanahan. And I 100% agree with him. I think he's the best coach in the league, in my personal opinion. And not only that, you have high-end pieces when you talk about McCaffrey, when you talk about George Kittle. So there's some really good foundational pieces and some weapons that they can use in that offense. And I just think that you need to talk about Brock Purdy, especially over the past few games here. He's been playing at such a high level, and it's impressive to see. And like right now, the 49ers, they would play the Philadelphia Eagles in the first round of the playoffs. I think the 49ers win that game. Yeah, I'm not convinced that the 49ers defense is that good, which I think is ultimately going to hold them back from getting where they want to be. But the Cowboys defense isn't good either. And Philly struggled to move the ball in the Cowboys defense. They just did. First quarter and a quarter, I guess you could say. Meaning first quarter and the first 5 minutes of the second quarter. Philly was moving the ball on Dallas's defense, but then Dallas had 8 straight stops. Dallas, their defense, not good at all. And they were able to stifle the Eagles offense. So am I to believe that the 49ers can make some things happen against that offense? Because I absolutely think they can. And when you look at play caller to play caller, Kyle Shanahan, Vic Fangio, they're 1-1. You could say Vic Fangio is the best defensive coordinator in the league. I'm cool with that. You could also say Kyle Shanahan's the best offensive play caller in the NFL. That is a very, very fair assessment there. So when you look at the offensive play caller for the San Francisco 49ers and defensive play caller for the Philadelphia Eagles, because I think that's going to be the matchup round one. We're getting Niners-Eagles round one in Philadelphia. You look at that and you say, oh, yeah, no, they're not at a disadvantage from play caller perspective. So that's going to be such an interesting matchup. And then, look, the other two top teams in the conference are the Rams and the Seahawks. Those are division opponents. And what do they say about division opponents? Forget the records at that point. Even though I think San Francisco has tied for the best record in the entire division. So that's going to be interesting. And look, that's a team that beat both of those teams already. The 49ers have beaten the Seahawks and they've beaten the Rams. And what really makes this so impressive to me is that the 49ers have been dealing with so many injuries that to me makes this extremely impressive what they've been doing this year. I mean, they went in to Indianapolis. I think they put up 47 points or something like that. I think that's the number we're looking at here. I don't know why I didn't have the score pulled off. Yeah, 48-27 against the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. That's pretty impressive. Now, I do kind of wonder, like, them most likely having to go and play cold weather football. Does the passing attack, does that like translate to that? That is something that I worry about. But again, like, they're most likely playing the Eagles round one. And it's not like their offense is scaring anybody. I mean, look, you go to yesterday's game, Brock Purdy, 25 for 34, 295 yards, 5 touchdowns and an interception. McCaffrey, 21 carries, 117 yards. Kittle, 115 yards. I mean, like, that's as impressive as it comes. And they have sneaky weapons offensively. Like, do I think their receiver core is like great? No. Can it execute what Kyle Shanahan wants them to execute? Yeah. Juwan Jennings, Kendrick Bourne, like, they're pretty solid receivers. And then you have Kittle to go along with it. McCaffrey's a guy that can contribute in the passing attack. So that's where I come away with this team, and I'm just very impressed. And again, they've dealt with injuries at the quarterback position. They lost Fred Warner. They lost Nick Bosa, and they just keep winning football games. I mean, I guess you could say, oh, well, look at the easy schedule that the San Francisco 49ers have had. But they beat the Rams and they beat the Seahawks. Like, I don't know. I don't really get that, to be honest with you. The whole, like, yeah, look at them. Like, look at their schedule. Their schedule's not been that good. Okay, they're playing against some of the best teams in the entire conference, right? Like, they played against Rams, Seahawks, beat both of them. Played against the Texans. Played against, and Buccaneers. I don't think you can really say they're that good. Played against the Jaguars earlier in the season. I don't know. I just came away so impressed with their performance against the Colts. And maybe that's more of a Colts not being as good as we thought they were going to be. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's, hey, you're playing against a 44-year-old Phillip Rivers. But at the same time, like, Phillip Rivers wasn't the reason that they lost this game. I mean, look at Phillip Rivers' stats. I mean, 277 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He took 2 sacks, 97 passer rating, 23 for 35. Again, you worry about that when it comes to, okay, Phillip Rivers was able to do this to this defense. But the question that I have is, like, what quarterback are you afraid of lighting you up in the playoffs outside of Matthew Stafford? Like, Caleb Williams, I think Caleb Williams is really starting to transform into a superstar. Do I have, like, all the faith in the world that he's going to be able to shred them up? No, I don't think so. Jalen Hurts isn't going to shred them up. Sam Darnold, he has to show that he can play in big spots. So, I mean, I don't know. I just feel really good about the San Francisco 49ers team. Not to make a Super Bowl run, but can they knock a team off that's trying to get to the Super Bowl? Knock off a team or two? Yeah, they can do that. They absolutely can do that. Okay, so I want to move on to the Indianapolis Colts because, man, talk about a team who they're in a bit of a struggle bus here, right? The Colts are interesting because they started the season off as good as they started it off, and now they haven't been able to put together wins. I mean, I think their record over their last 8 games is like 1-6 or something along those lines. And that's just not good at all. And the thing that's scary about the Colts is that they're not going to make the playoffs this year, right? The chances of that are extremely slim. And what's their long-term future at quarterback? Are they going to re-sign Daniel Jones? Do they feel confident that coming off another injury from Daniel Jones, that he's going to be able to play at the level that we saw him play with earlier in the season? Are you sure that this is just a one-year wonder type of thing for Daniel Jones? Are you sure that he can be consistent? Do you feel confident in paying Daniel Jones the type of money that you're probably going to have to pay him to keep him? I mean, look, that is the type of signing that if the Colts do decide to re-sign Daniel Jones, like, you're putting your job on the line for Daniel Jones, essentially. Do you feel confident doing that? Because I don't know how confident I would feel doing that if I'm Chris Ballard, especially because now they're out their 2 first-round picks for the next 2 seasons. They don't have a first-round pick until 2028. That's not good. Which is maybe why, instead of trying to make this team into something that, trying to make this team into a team that's like trying to contend. I don't know if that's necessarily possible, on top of the fact that like you may just be better served. Any type of assets that you can get for your best players, you probably need to entertain that. They're not going to, because in the NFL, when you look at these general managers, like their clock for, being able to keep their jobs, it's a lot different than a lot of other sports. Like this is a league where you got to be able to turn around a franchise right away. Right now, Chris Ballard's a different story because he's been there for so long. But what I'm trying to say is that a lot of general managers in the NFL, what they'll do is they'll try and get as much out of a roster that's just clearly not ready to compete that they can. And I think a lot of times that actually hurts their ability to actually build a team the right way. Right? Like I feel like a lot of these owners are impatient and they just want their teams to win football games. But sometimes you got to look at your owner and say, we're just not good enough. We're a few years away here. We're not a free agent away. We're not a draft pick away. But they know saying something like that, an owner might not want to hear that. They might not want to hear that their team may be playing bad football for a couple years here because their roster isn't as good. They don't want to hear that. But unfortunately, some of them do have to hear that. And if you're in Chris Ballard's position, I mean, man, you don't necessarily have that leeway. I don't think you can go to I'm sorry, Jim Irsay's daughter. I'm sorry, because I attached for so long Jim Irsay to the Colts, and I completely forgot that his daughter is Carly Irsay. Like, are you going to go up to Carly Irsay and say, hey, look, we've had the amount of time that we've had as general manager, that being Chris Ballard, can you give us more time? Can you give us more time to trade away assets so that we can rebuild this thing? I don't think Chris Ballard has that type of leash, because what the response I think that Irsay would probably have is, you had like 8 or 9 years to get this thing done. You've had 8 or 9 years to build a competent football team. And I think the last time they made the playoffs was 2020. It's been too long. Sorry, you got to go. And this is why, again, I'm going to talk about it when I talk about the Jets. It's never a bad thing to where you look at something and you're like, all right, this isn't heading in the direction that I think it needs to be heading in. I'm just going to move ties. I'm just going to move on, because that's what I think the Colts probably need to do with Chris Ballard. They probably just need to move on. It's been far too long since this team has even been relevant. It's time. And I said this before the season. There's too many massive mistakes that Chris Ballard has made for him to keep his job. And another general manager coming into that situation, they're going to be at such a disadvantage. They're going to have to draft their tails off in the second round because of the fact that they're not going to have 2 first-round picks for the next 2 years. So when I look at that, Chris Ballard has hamstrung whoever they decide to bring in as their next general manager, because I think that's where this is going. And it's time. And missing on Anthony Richardson as well. That's another thing. You missed on Anthony Richardson. This Sauce Gardner trade, you traded 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner, who is a very good player. Worth 2 first-round picks? Absolutely not. And going all in on a team with Daniel Jones as your quarterback, I don't necessarily think that was the right way to go about it. I mean, I appreciated him swinging for the fences, but now that we have hindsight, the Sauce Gardner trade was a terrible idea. And I think that they probably want that back, because now they're not going to, I mean, the Colts next year, like, let's just be 100% honest with ourselves. Who's their quarterback going to be next year? If it's Daniel Jones, when is he even going to be able and willing to play? I mean, this is a team next year that could win about 5 or 6 games. Like, that's just the way it is. I mean, what high-level talent are they going to be able to add to their football team now that they don't have a first-round pick? They're going to have to hit big on their picks, not in the first round, because they don't have a first-round pick. And especially in that 2027 draft, I don't know. And what's really worrisome for the Colts is that they don't have a quarterback for right now. Like, we'll see what happens with Daniel Jones. And if they come to the conclusion that, hey, we probably need to move on from Daniel Jones, This is his second major injury in his career, and we don't necessarily know if we want to pay that type of money that is probably going to be required to keep Daniel Jones there. We don't know if we're going to be able to pay him that because we don't know if he's actually worth that. So that's why I say, if I'm Carly Ursay, I think you just got to move on from Chris Ballard. You just do, because now what he's going to do is he's going to make desperation moves. He made a desperation move with the Sauce Gardner trade. And because he made that desperation move, you now don't have 2 first-round picks over the next 2 years. And if you put him in charge of the decision to keep Daniel Jones as the quarterback of this football team, he's going to look at it and he's going to be like, I need a quarterback. I don't have the means to go get one. So I'm going to double and triple down on bad decisions because I'm making desperation moves rather than making moves that a general manager who has job security would be willing to do. He does not have job security right now, Chris Ballard. And because of that, if you give him another year, he's going to make some bad decisions. And one of those bad decisions he's going to make is giving Daniel Jones a ton of money this offseason, which, by the way, Daniel Jones was good this year. There's no doubt about it. But there's no way you're telling me that with the inconsistent play that Daniel Jones has had over the course of his career and adding another injury to his injury history, that you feel good giving this guy, what, $45, $50 million, somewhere around there? I don't know. I wouldn't feel good about that. You never know when these quarterbacks just have a one-year wonder thing. They get with the right coordinator. But then, look, I always say this about coordinators. You can only mask up so much. You can only mask up so much. Eventually, the tape gets out. Teams find the tendencies of these quarterbacks. And this is the type of stuff that happens. So I don't know. It's a rough future for the Minnesota Vikings. Or I'm sorry, not the Indianapolis Colts, to say the least. And I think they just got to wipe the slate clean. Move on from Chris Ballard. I'm keeping Shane Steichen. If I'm Carly Ursay, I am keeping Shane Steichen. And the reason why I'm keeping Shane Steichen is that guy is one of the best coaches in the league. And I feel like whatever general manager they bring in next, can they make the proper moves that's needed to be made to field a competitive roster because they're not making desperation moves? The Sauce Gardner trade, I'm sorry, that is just a desperation move. And they're really seeing the downside of that particular trade. So, I want to move on here. If you guys haven't already, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. Make sure to check out the rest of the shows on the Kretschman Media Network. I would greatly appreciate that. I want to move on to the New York Jets, the team that traded with the Indianapolis Colts. And this is where I want to go here. The Jets, I feel like they are in such a good position to compete for maybe a playoff spot next year. Maybe. I think the Jets have a really bright future. Now, they're going to have to hit on their draft picks. There's no doubt about it. But when you look at their draft capital this year, they're going to have 2 first-round picks. They're going to have 2 second-round picks. The next year, they're going to have 3 first-round picks, and I believe a second-round pick. So they are in a fantastic position. And here's one thing that I like about what the Jets did. The Jets said, we'll move on from Quentin Williams. We'll move on from Sauce Gardner. Great players. And we're going to recognize their value, and we're going to take advantage of their value. Teams are willing to give us major capital for these players because they're really good players, but they don't fit our timeline. They're players that are in the prime of their career. And this is a team that if they would have kept the draft capital that they had, this is probably a team that's multiple years away from really even competing. And at that point, they're starting to exit their prime. What do they have left to really give this football team? But what I like about Darren Mogi here is that he said, we have valuable assets and we're going to move on from them. And not only that, we're going to make sure to keep the right assets. Those 2 young tackles that they have, they could be real big time players in this league. But they traded Williams and they traded Gardner, but they didn't trade Garrett Wilson. And that to me is where I look at that and I say, smart move. And you want to know why? because they're going to be in a position this year to draft one of these quarterbacks at the top of the draft, whether it be Mendoza or Dante Moore. They're now going to come into your offense. They're going to have 2 bookend tackles. They're going to have a receiver in Garrett Wilson, who is an extremely reliable receiver, a very nuanced receiver to throw the football to. So that's where I look at this and I say, no, they have the right pieces here. And you want to know what another decision they're going to make that I think is just going to be the right move? Not paying Breece Hall. I like Breece Hall. He's a good player. You don't pay running backs if you're not competing for anything. I don't know how far the Jets are away from contention. You know, if they have a good draft class this year, I mean, they have 2 first-round picks this year. They have 2 second-round picks this year. They can make some legitimate moves in this draft. They can really improve their roster through this draft. And if they can do that, they put themselves in a really good position to potentially contend this year. I mean, they're in a position where they're going to be able to bring in free agents. Do you want to do that? Like, if they want to do that, they have the opportunity to do that. I think, again, they're not a team that next year I think is really going to compete for anything. I think they're going to need to fix a lot with their defense. But I love the move by Darren Mogi to say, Williams, Gardner, valuable, great players for our organization, but we're going to move on. We're not going to try and squeeze all the juice out of this orange that we can. We're going to cut our losses here. And that's one thing in football that I feel like a lot of general managers, because they don't have job security, that's one thing that they struggle to do, is understand, I got to lay up here. If you're a golfer, you understand that term. I got to lay up, because what I'm looking at right now is a team that's we're far away, and the players that we have in our prime, other teams are willing to give us high draft capital for them. We're just gonna make the move. Always cut ties early before it's too late. And if they would have waited another year to move on from these players, who's telling if they would have gotten the type of draft capital? So they struck while the iron was hot. They made it a point to say, this is the direction of our franchise. We're not a year away. We're multiple years away. But trading these players could actually speed up the timeline, because trading them, you get those draft cap, then you get that draft capital. Rookies come in right away and they play high level football. There's plenty of rookies that come in right away and they make impacts on their football team. So who's to say they don't, they don't bring in a quarterback day one and he's one of the 15 best quarterbacks in the league? We see it so often now. I mean, look, I like these quarterbacks. I like Mendoza. I like Dante Moore. If they have the number 1 overall pick and they have to pick between those guys, I personally would go Dante Moore, just because I think there's more upside with Dante Moore. And I think as a passer, he's as prolific as a passer as you're going to get in the college game. But if they pick Mendoza, that's not a bad pick either. That's a really good pick. So I just like the direction this team's going. One thing I will say, I like Aaron Glenn. I will never, ever, ever sign off on a defensive-minded head coach. I'm sorry. It's just not my nature. Do I think Aaron Glenn's going to be a good coach for the Jets? I do. I think he was dealt a bad hand this year. But never, ever would I hire a defensive-minded head coach. Unless it's a Mike Vrabel. That might be like the like one-time exception type thing, right? Because when you look at the NFL nowadays, if you have a hotshot coordinator who's really making things happen, he's going to get poached. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. The quarterback position is the most important position in all of sports. You will have organizations that will hire head coaches strictly for the quarterback, not for the team, for the quarterback. Miami did that with Mike McDaniel. They said, hey, look, you are the perfect coach that we can get for our quarterback. And they hired him. Was it because he was a great head coach? No, Mike McDaniel is not a great head coach, but he worked well with Tua for a little bit of time there. So that's why I'm saying, hey, look, defensive-minded head coaches, I will never advocate for a defensive-minded head coach. You always get an offensive-minded play caller Because one thing that I think people mix up is that they think just because you're an offensive-minded head coach that you can't be a guy that sets the tone with your culture. I think that's completely false. I think Sean McVay sets the tone with his culture. I think Kyle Shanahan sets the tone with his culture. I think Andy Reid sets the tone with his culture. Those are offensive-minded head coaches that call plays. I will never hire, if I ever got the opportunity to be a general manager, which I don't think I will ever get the opportunity to do so, I would never hire a defensive-minded head coach. It's just not in my nature. Because we see this with Tampa Bay. Todd Bowles has been hitting on his offensive coordinator picks. Outside of this year, he's been hitting on his offensive coordinator picks. When you look at Dave Canales, home run. When you look at Liam Cohen, home run. What happened? They got hired. They got hired as head coaches. Because teams are so infatuated with offensive-minded head coaches that call plays because they want their quarterback to be as good as possible. That's why, that's the one move where I look at Darren Mogi and I say, come on, man. Come on. Again, nothing against Aaron Glenn. I like Aaron Glenn. I thought he was a hell of a defensive play caller for the Detroit Lions. But I'm sorry, I can't do the defensive-minded head coaches. But that's besides the point. That's going to be it for the episode today. If you guys haven't already, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Peace. I can't stand defensive-minded head coaches.